making another video on this all-purpose seasoning. So, I've already made two videos on this for my own amusement more than anything. So, it was cheap in the supermarket. I wanted to see if I could use it as a like chicken stock substitute, even though there's no chicken in it. All it really is just a bit of a flavoured salt with some dried vegetables in. So I separated out the powder part from the dried vegetable part, and then I faffed around with the vegetables, the dried vegetables, and turned them in and powdered them, and then I'd be able to use them in soups and things, just not to kind of like waste them. But I was kind of thinking that I think within those dried vegetables, it wasn't just all the vegetables from this seasoning. It was dried vegetables from like powdered soups or packet soups. So, and it didn't taste very salty. It just tasted of dried vegetables. And so then I was kind of thinking that if we just use the vegetables from here, from this, will they be too salty? Because there's quite a lot of salt in that. So let's separate them out and let's give them a taste. Now, I've got a few sieves, a few different sizes of sieves, because the vegetable parts are bigger than the salt part. So we kind of want the salt to go pass through and then be left with the vegetables on top, and then we'll taste the vegetables. Now, so we can do that. Like that, and then we notice that we've got the vegetables there, and then underneath, let's get another container, and then underneath we are left with the salty part and the bits that pass through there, like that, which is what I was thinking we could just use as a chicken stock substitute to make it cheaper. I mean, chicken stock cubes are pretty cheap anyway, but just the idea of, I was just thinking, can we make things even cheaper? So let's blow my nose, because I've got a bit of a cold first. Right, so I think those two sieves are about the same in grade. So will it pass through this one, which is certainly finer? Well, some stuff's coming through, but not much. So we can, to speed up the process of sieving things, what you do is you put things through a thicker sieve, a sieve that's got bigger holes in it first, and then you can get out the majority of the big particles, and then you put it through finer sieves and finer sieves and finer sieves. But so, I mean, I suppose really what we're doing is we're sieving out the individual ingredients. So I forget what's in here. It's mostly just salt. It's like 60% salt, and there's some sugar in there, and then there's 15% of dry vegetables, and then there's all the other things, like anti-caking agents and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think putting it through that sieve is going to kind of work. But if it's salt and it's sugar, that's pretty much what's going to be in these two parts, and then it's just going to be dry vegetables in that part. So we're not going to get much more through than that. I don't really think it's worth bothering with. It's just some herbs there. Yeah, so let's not bother with that. Let's just put it through that sieve, and we'll keep them separate. So that can go in there. And then, so I'll finish off doing this, and then we'll grind that down and we'll give it a taste. Right, so I have ground up the vegetables. Let's give it a taste. See if it's not too salty. Alright, tastes a little bit salty, does that? It tastes a little bit salty, so I don't think we can actually sieve out the vegetables from something like that and then turn that into like a soup. It would just be too salty. But it could be added to something else, and it would improve the the flavour. So if it was to put into a soup, it would thicken the soup because it's basically a vegetable. By adding water, it turns into a vegetable puree. It's slightly salty, a little bit too salty. So you just kind of have to regulate how much salt you put into the soup before you added that, and then, but it certainly would do that. But I kind of thought that maybe with sifting it, all the salt would have kind of come out, but obviously there's fine particles of salt, well, still stuck to the vegetables. So, okay, not to worry. So that doesn't matter, but it's kind of saved me a job not having to do it. I'm not gonna add some water to that and thicken it up. But I should do, really, shouldn't I? Take it to kind of soup consistency. We'll do that. We'll add some. Let's get a pan of water and boil it, and then add that, and then see if it's at the right kind of consistency for a soup, and see if it's too salty. I'll only use a little bit. We'll do that. Just added some water to this spice grinder. I've ground the rest of it, and just using this, so I'm not creating too much washing up. So if it's not the right consistency, but if it's too salty now, it'll be too salty if we were to add more of the ground up vegetables. Yeah, that would just be too salty. That would just be too salty. So all those dried vegetables that I did have were obviously part of other soups and things that I'd sifted out the vegetables for whatever reason if I needed to. Let's give some secrets away. So if I had like a vegetable soup and a leek and potato soup, and I didn't just kind of quite have enough of the leek potato soup, what I would do, what I'd advise you to do, a bit of a kitchen hack, is to take the vegetable soup and sift out the ground vegetables in that, like the dehydrated vegetables, because there'd be things like carrot and all kinds of different vegetables in that. Sift that out, and then use the powder that was left after the sifting to use that as a base to add to the leek and potato soup, and then you can be able to kind of like bulk it out without having to buy any more leek and potato soup. The other way would be fine. If you didn't have enough vegetable soup and you had some leek and potato soup, and then you simply just add the leek and potato soup to the vegetable soup, but you couldn't do it the other way around because you wouldn't want bits of carrot, dehydrated carrot, in your leek and potato soup. But anyway, that's by the by. I think out of interest, what we'll do is I'm going to be using some onions over the next few days. So to add on to this video, what we'll do is we'll I saw someone cutting down on vegetable waste by drying the onion skins and then turning them into a powder, and then using that as a flavouring. So I think we'll have a go at that as well, just out of interest. So that can be a part of this video as well. So it's not just like a waste of a video. And I kind of think to myself sometimes, why do I, if videos don't kind of work, why do I publish them? But I think I always kind of need to know if, most of my questions come from because I can't get the answers that I want to know to the questions I want to ask. So even if something's a fail, we've still got to ask the question. And if something doesn't work, if that's the only reason why someone didn't make a video on it or publish it somewhere, then surely we kind of need to know so we don't make the same kind of mistakes. So I think that's probably my justification in faffing around with all my videos. Justification to myself. Watch videos, don't watch videos, I don't really care. I have some onion skins that I have, well, I've washed the onions and then so the skins are clean, still a bit wet. What I did do first was I cut the root off, because if there's going to be any real dirt, it's going to be in there. So I cut the root off first, then peeled them. Now I'm going to taste them first out of curiosity, and then I'm going to dry them out. So, but if you notice when you're peeling onions, so this is an onion that I peeled, that part there is dry, and then that part there is actually onion. So we'll just whip that off. But you can see that all the skin is the layers of onion which have dried out, because that's that. So that is skin which goes into the onion layer. So we know that all they really are is just the onion layers which have dried out and formed a skin. So let's give it a taste. I can't imagine they're particularly very nice to eat, but we'll see how we go. It tastes oniony. Tastes oniony, but not very oniony. A bit like paper. I don't want to put that one in. Yeah, we'll see. So, we'll dry these out in the oven, 100 degrees, something like that. And then we'll puree them down in the spice grinder. We don't want those in the spice grinder. And then we'll see what the powder tastes like. So, I have dried out the onion skins. So they're all nice and crunchy and crisp. No moisture left in them. And I have ground them down in the spice grinder. So we have a onion skin powder. So, let's give that a try. Let's give it a taste. I'll just wet my finger and we'll kind of see. There's flavour there. There's flavour there, but I think we'd have to use quite a lot of that to kind of make a kind of difference. Although that I always kind of, so one of the things that I say is the difference between good food and bad food is kind of the effort, but it's also the little things that you do. So adding, you know, adding a little bit more salt or a little bit more butter, adding some lemon juice to adjust the acidity levels, are all tiny little things that you do, and you don't kind of miss doing one of them out of a recipe, but you miss out 5 and it's a huge difference. So that's kind of one of the secrets of cooking. These 10 little things that we do make dishes so much better. So even though there's not that much flavour in it, to use that in something, it would add some flavour to it. Not a lot, and you probably wouldn't notice that it's not there if you didn't put it in. But if you did 5 other little things, if you didn't do 5 or 10 other little things like that, then you certainly would notice that. So let's put some of this in some water and see what happens. So like a teaspoon in there, and then we'll get an idea of if we can use it as a stock. That smells good, does that? That smells good. That was kind of quite surprising. That instant kind of smell that I got from that was kind of quite remarkable. Really kind of quite remarkable. So let's taste that stocky water. See what this tastes like. It tastes of something, but it's a little bit bitter. So it's a little bit bitter in its flavour. Let's add a little bit of salt. Free running salt, and see if that kind of, what that does to it. So just a little bit of salt, just to change that flavour. Just wash it off on a spoon, and then we might just strain it as well. So we'll give that a taste and see what happens there. Now it's quite bitter, is that? That's kind of quite bitter. So anything that we add to that is going to become a little bit bitter, although that's kind of quite interesting. I was looking for something that was going to make something bitter. I wanted to have a go at making Campari, which is kind of quite bitter, and I was wondering how I was going to do it. So it doesn't really taste of onions, but it's got a bitter flavour to it. So that's interesting. Maybe we could make an onion bitters to use in cocktails. That is rather quite bitter. You probably need some sugar in it to kind of balance it. So if you were to drink Campari, Campari is kind of quite sweet. but bitter. But if it didn't have the sweetness, it'd be a little bit too bitter. Let's strain that. Do something. I'll pause and I'll find something to strain it through. Right, so I've just found a bit of old cloth. It's stained, it's not dirty, it's just that I use it for straining things like this through all the time. So the onion skins aren't particularly very nice to eat, you know, like they kind of get in your teeth. It's not something that you'd want in a in a recipe, but maybe if we're making a kind of like a stock powder, that might be kind of quite useful. But once again, it's got a little bit of bitterness to it, which we don't want. So we knock a spoon and then give that a taste and see how this tastes. So it's a lovely colour. That's a lovely colour as that, isn't it? And that's because of the red onions. No, that's just not a very nice flavour. You wouldn't want to add that to anything. Let's just add a bit of, so let's just add a little bit of sugar. This is for my own interest, is this. Thinking about that's quite a lot of sugar, but thinking about making like a Campari substitute. You know, like just adding a little bit of sugar is just going to get rid of that bitterness. But I don't think drying out onion skins is going to be a good idea. There's not enough flavour in it to compensate for that bitterness. Yeah, so the bitterness kind of outweighs the flavour, if that makes sense. No, that's just not very nice. That's just not very nice. The onion powder was kind of quite interesting, but it's got an aftertaste to it. So I wouldn't recommend drying them out and doing something with them. If you're making a stock, you sometimes leave the onion skins on, but that's such a lot of stock that you were making that you kind of don't really taste the bitterness to it. So that's not such a bad thing, but I'm even going to keep that. Might do. I'll probably grind up the rest of it and keep the powder, and then if I think about something that might be worth doing, it might be worth doing. But then it kind of begs the question, you know, should we dry out some, these are the peeled onions, should we dry out actual onion and see what happens to that? That's kind of, see, onions are sweet, but only when we cook them. I don't know. Anyway, so I don't recommend you do that. And the video that I saw saying that not to waste your onion skins and turn them into something else, I think it's a complete waste of time. Yeah, if you were to add that to a soup or a stew, it'd just make it taste bitter, even though they don't taste bitter when they're like that. Interesting. I don't know. But anyway, we had to try, and things don't always work out. But we learned, you know, I think so. Sometimes you can learn something by eliminating something. So I always kind of think if you don't know what you want to do for a job, you know, then the first thing you should do is narrow down the field. Decide to yourself what you really don't want to do, and then you can narrow down what you might want to do, or what you might be interested in pursuing. But if you don't want to be, if you're not interested in cars and you don't like getting your hands dirty, then you don't be a mechanic. You know, so you can rule that one out. So any kind of jobs like that, you can don't like getting your hands dirty, then don't do those jobs. You know, if you don't like working with other people, you know, kind of stay away from those type of jobs where you can have a lot of interactions with people. And the same with cooking. If we can eliminate something as a bad idea, then that's as useful as something that is a good idea.